record, and you may begin.
Okay. Hello, friends. My name is JJ McCULLOUGH, and thank you for inviting me back. I am a full-time professional YouTuber based in Vancouver with nearly 1 million subscribers, and I am a longtime critic of the Online Streaming Act. While I can't claim to speak for the vast and diverse community of professional Canadian YouTubers, I do think that it is a pretty broadly shared conclusion within my community that the Online Streaming Act, from our perspective, is a bit of a solution in search of a problem, and in that sense is worrying primarily because it is such a potentially destabilizing force to such a large and important and fast-growing sector of Canada's cultural economy. When I last spoke to you guys nearly a year and a half ago, I mentioned how there were over 1,000 Canadians running YouTube channels with over 100,000 subscribers. Today, according to the website Social Blade, that number is over 5,000. There will soon be more Canadians working as full-time YouTubers than Canadians working for radio stations. If we include the number of Canadians employed by professional YouTubers, then even the most conservative estimates would easily have the Canadian YouTuber economy encompassing over 10,000 Canadian media jobs. I want to emphasize that this success has occurred in spite of an absence of any government subsidies or government regulation mandating the promotion or discoverability of Canadian content on YouTube. In my 4 years as a leading critic of Bills C10 and Bill C11, I have had countless conversations with other Canadian YouTubers. And by far, their biggest worry has been that in seeking to honor the Act's mandate, the CRTC will impose some convoluted definition of what makes a YouTube video or channel Canadian enough to be promoted by YouTube as part of their obligation of compliance with the Act, and that this new promotional mechanism will upend all of our current understandings of how to be successful on the site. Even though I know that the Commission is under direction to not directly regulate the content of, quote, social media creators, which would include YouTubers, I continue to believe that this assurance is fundamentally incompatible with the Commission's mandate to impose new, quote, discoverability requirements on platforms like YouTube to increase the visibility of certain forms of verified Canadian content. There continues to be ambiguity regarding at what point someone ceases to be an everyday user of a social media platform creating user-generated content and instead becomes the sort of large-scale corporate media enterprise that the Online Streaming Act exists to regulate. Based on an online hearing I attended a few months ago, I understand that the CRTC is leaning against defining Canadian content on the basis of cultural symbols or themes, and this is certainly good news. I have had so many conversations with creators who are worrying about how they could make, say, their YouTube channel about video game Easter eggs or reviews of power tools more ostentatiously Canadian. If there is one thing I can say with complete confidence, it is that no one in my community wants the success of their content to be reliant on passing any sort of government-defined cultural test. But that said, I believe that current proposals to define the Canadianness of online videos on the basis of content-neutral characteristics would be enormously destabilizing in a whole other way. Proposals to award Canadian status on the basis of how many Canadians worked on a video or channel would have severe consequences for the many successful Canadian YouTubers who make use of international editors, animators, scriptwriters, researchers, or other assistants to produce their content. To be clear, the technology does exist to allow YouTubers to self-certify this sort of information. YouTube already asks us to self-audit every single video we upload according to a whole bunch of metrics, including whether the video is intended for children or not, and whether it contains a whole host of controversial subject matter like nudity or violence. and even the types of nudity or violence. I won't disingenuously claim that it would be impossible for YouTube to introduce a system that asks professional YouTubers to verify the number of Canadians who made each video. Such a system would, however, be incredibly damaging. Making videos is a heavily globalized industry these days, in which creators rarely feel the need to restrain their hiring decisions to people within their own neighborhoods. The goal is finding the best person who is most qualified to do the work that is required. In my case, I am based in Vancouver. I have one editor who lives in Ottawa and another one living in Mexico. That sort of thing is very common. A Canadian-based YouTuber who relies on remote help from people living in a diverse array of global cities. The other day I had a conversation with a very large YouTuber, much larger than me, and he is based in Toronto, and he said that he had 10 editors working for him, and only one of them was Canadian. Making the nationality of a YouTuber's staff a variable affecting the degree that their videos are boosted or not would be an incredibly punitive, divisive move with the potential to cause a severe loss of revenue for channels whose staff is suddenly declared too international to deserve promotion. YouTube videos are likewise not produced using any sort of consistent staffing system. Different channels will have different amounts and types of employees, and many of these jobs will not be analogous to the sort of positions that the CRTC's point system was designed to accommodate. YouTube videos are hard to analogize to TV shows or movies just because their complexity varies so much based on the genre of content and specific production values. For example, it would be impossible to make a cooking show for television without employing an audiovisual director and a picture editor, in addition to the on-screen talent. In the context of a smaller YouTube channel, however, it would be very common for the on-screen talent to also be her own audiovisual director and picture editor. Generally speaking, YouTubers acquire more staff as they get bigger, which would mean that under a points system of staff-based certification, larger channels that became successful prior to the Act would be punished if they had any pre-existing international staff, while smaller channels would face unprecedented obstacles in attempting to grow, since they would be the first generation of channels required to exclusively hire Canadian staff in order to be favored by CRTC mandates. This is what I mean when I say that so many Canadian YouTubers regard the Online Streaming Act as a solution in search of a problem. Since Canadian content is already extremely popular on YouTube, mandating the promotion of some new, more esoterically defined flavor of Canadian content will just bring disorder and uncertainty to a status quo that is already functioning very well for what is already almost certainly the fastest growing community of Canadian media creators across the country. Thank you.